Welcome to the Political Science Data Podcast. I'm Ryan, your host. This podcast helps you keep up to date with political science data and research. I am joined by my co-host, Emma.
Hello, Ryan. It's a pleasure to join you on this podcast. Today we're talking about international relations research.
As we record this podcast, US President Donald Trump is threatening to impose steep tariffs on America's trading partners. US trade policy has important implications for the global economy and international relations. Political science data and research help us understand the politics of international trade.
So we've selected some recent articles about international trade that help us understand current events. Ryan will introduce the articles and I will discuss them. If the discussion piques your interest, you can find links to the articles and their replication data on the Political Science Data website. Now then, Ryan, what's the first article we're covering today?
To get things started, let's discuss tariffs as electoral weapons, the political geography of the US-China trade war. This article was authored by Sung Eun Kim and Yotam Margalit. It was published in 2021 by Cambridge International Organization. Let's start with the basics. What is the central question this paper is asking?
The article asks whether China deliberately used tariffs during the US-China trade war to hurt Republican electoral prospects in the 2018 midterms, and if so, whether that strategy actually changed voting outcomes. It also examines why voters in the targeted areas responded the way they did.
So how does this fit into the broader literature on trade and sanctions?
Traditionally, scholars have treated tariffs as tools for domestic political gain, protecting certain industries or rewarding supporters. This study links that idea to the sanctions literature, especially smart sanctions, which target specific political constituencies. It's unusual because it treats tariffs as a form of foreign political intervention, aimed at influencing another country's elections.
What kind of research design and data do they use here?
It's an observational study combining several datasets. The authors map China's retaliatory tariff lists from 2018 onto U.S. employment data at the county level to measure local exposure. They link that to past and current election results to see if targeted areas were politically strategic. They also use industry-level export data, original survey responses, and Google Trends search data to explore how awareness and blame shaped voting behavior.
And what do they actually find?
They find strong evidence that China's tariffs targeted industries located in Republican-leaning counties, especially in competitive congressional districts. Those areas saw a measurable drop in Republican vote share between 2016 and 2018, about 0.25 percentage point for every 1% of the workforce exposed. Their counterfactual suggests Republicans would have won 4 more House seats without the tariffs. Survey and search data indicate the effect came more from voters recognizing and blaming Republicans for the trade war than from direct economic hardship.
From your perspective, is this a new contribution or more of an incremental one?
It's a significant contribution because it documents a rare case of foreign trade policy being used with clear electoral intent, and then ties it to actual voting shifts. The combination of geographic targeting analysis, electoral impact estimation, and mechanism testing through surveys makes it stand out from earlier work on trade politics or sanctions.
Finally, who should read this article?
It's most relevant for scholars of international political economy, election studies, and anyone interested in foreign influence on domestic politics. The analysis is data-heavy, so readers without a background in quantitative methods might find the details challenging, but the narrative and findings are clear enough for a broader policy-oriented audience.
Political science data features this article in our coverage of the international relations subfield.
And we should remind listeners that the authors posted full replication materials online. You can find links on the Political Science Data website.
I was hoping we can now turn our attention to the politics of rejection, explaining Chinese import refusals. This article was authored by Sung Eun Kim, Rebecca L. Perlman and Grace Zeng. It was published by Wiley and AJPS in 2025. Emma, to start us off, what's the main question this article is trying to answer?
The authors ask whether China uses health and safety regulations, specifically import refusals, not just to protect consumers, but as a political tool to punish other countries during times of political tension. They investigate whether these refusals systematically increase when China has disputes with its trading partners.
How does this fit into the existing research on trade and politics?
Most work on regulatory barriers treats them as disguised protectionism, aimed at shielding domestic industries. This paper adds to the literature by showing that these same barriers can serve non-economic goals, specifically coercion or retaliation, blurring the line between trade policy and foreign policy tools.
What's the research design like? What kinds of data and methods are they using?
It's an observational study combining original administrative data and event data. The authors compile over 25,000 records of Chinese food import refusals from 2011 to 2019, drawn from monthly reports by Chinese customs. They match these to measures of political tension from the DELT database, focusing on conflict events involving military actors. They then run statistical models, including fixed effects regressions and Poisson estimations, to test whether spikes in political tensions are followed by increases in refusals.
So what do they actually find?
They find consistent evidence that political tensions lead to more intense use of import refusals. Increases in conflict scores are associated with significant rises in the number of refused shipments from the targeted country. The effect shows up on the intensive margin, meaning more refusals when tensions are high, but not on whether refusals happen at all. Case studies of Philippine bananas and South Korean cosmetics and food during disputes illustrate the mechanism.
In your view, is this a new contribution or more incremental?
It's a novel contribution because it moves beyond the standard protectionism narrative to document a systematic link between political disputes and regulatory enforcement in China. The combination of large-scale quantitative evidence with detailed case studies strengthens the argument and fills a gap in the political economy literature.
Finally, who do you think should read this?
It's most relevant for scholars of international political economy, trade policy, and Chinese foreign policy. The statistical methods are technical, so readers without a quantitative background might skim the modeling sections, but the case narratives make the argument accessible to a broader academic and policy audience.
Let's turn our attention to commerce, coalitions, and global value chains, coordinated and collective lobbying on trade. The article is authored by Hao Zhang. It was published by Wiley in AJPS in 2025. Emma, what's the central research question this article tried to answer?
The paper asks how global value chain linkages, meaning production connections between domestic firms through a shared foreign partner, shape political coalitions around trade policy. In simple terms, it's about whether these supply chain ties make firms more likely to work together in lobbying for trade liberalization.
How does this fit into the existing literature on trade politics?
Most traditional models treat industries or firms as isolated actors, predicting lobbying patterns based on factor endowments, industry type, or firm-specific traits. This article challenges that by showing how interconnected production networks can cut across those categories, fostering coalitions that established theories don't fully explain.
What's the research design? What kind of data and methods does the author use?
The study is observational and relies on a large original dataset. The author builds firm-to-firm supply chain networks for U.S. public firms from 2003 to 2020 using FactSet's supply chain relationship database. These linkages are matched to over 82,000 lobbying reports on trade and tariffs from the LobbyView database. The analysis uses network models to see whether firms connected through the same foreign partner coordinate their lobbying activities.
And what does the author find?
The results show that U.S. firms with global value chain linkages are more likely to lobby together, lobby on the same bill, and even hire the same lobbyist. Stronger linkages among lead firms also increase collective lobbying through trade associations. Finally, the paper finds that these linkages can predict the formation and depth of preferential trade agreements.
What's your assessment? Are these findings new or more incremental?
They're quite novel in that they provide direct, firm-level evidence for coalition formation driven by production networks, not just industry or firm characteristics. This adds an important layer to our understanding of trade politics, especially by explaining cross-industry alliances that earlier theories couldn't account for.
Who should read this article?
It's best suited for scholars of international political economy, especially those working on trade policy, lobbying, or global supply chains. The methods are technical, but the argument is clearly laid out, so even readers without a heavy quantitative background could follow the big-picture insights.
I see.
That's my take, Ryan. Thanks for letting me walk through it.
In our final segment, I'd like to explore an interesting article that precedes a slightly different level of analysis. The article is entitled Asset Specificity, Corporate Protection and Trade Policy, Firm-Level Evidence from Anti-Dumping Petitions in 19 Jurisdictions. It was published by Cambridge in the British Journal of Political Science in 2022. Emma, let's again start with the central question this article is trying to answer.
The authors ask whether firms that have more specific, immobile assets, like factories and equipment that can't easily be repurposed, are more likely to win anti-dumping trade protection. They also look at whether protection given to one firm spills over to other firms producing the same good.
How does this fit into existing trade policy research?
Most research looks at trade protection at the industry level, often through the lens of factor mobility. This article brings the focus down to the firm level, showing that asset specificity, a concept usually applied to industries, can explain differences in political influence and protection outcomes among individual companies.
What kind of research design and data do they use?
They use firm-level observational data, combining the global anti-dumping database, which records petitions and outcomes across 19 WTO jurisdictions, with financial data from the Orbis database. Asset specificity is measured as the ratio of fixed assets to total assets. They analyze over 1,000 firm complaint observations using spatial autoregressive models to see how protection for one firm affects other same-good producers.
And what do they find?
Firms with more specific assets are significantly more likely to receive anti-dumping duties, and when they do, the duties tend to be larger. Protection also diffuses. Firms producing the same good benefit when another firm gets protection, but within a product group, firms compete, and the more mobile producers are less likely to get duties if an immobile competitor has already secured them.
Do you see this as a new contribution or more of an incremental finding?
It's a novel contribution because it connects firm-level asset specificity to both the likelihood and intensity of trade protection, and it uncovers competitive and spillover dynamics within product groups. That adds nuance to our understanding of how protection is allocated.
Who should read this article?
It's most relevant for scholars of international political economy, trade law, and firm-level political influence. The statistical modeling is technical, but the theoretical argument is straightforward enough for policy analysts and advanced students to follow.
Let's wrap up the podcast by applying research insights to current events. Free trade is generally thought to promote prosperity. Why might the US and its trading partners end up in a trade war when that is a bad outcome for all sides?
Because trade measures like tariffs, import refusals, and anti-dumping duties can serve strategic political purposes, punishing rivals, protecting powerful domestic interests, or signaling resolve. Governments may accept the mutual economic costs of a trade war to pursue these broader political or distributive goals.
Based on your analysis of recent articles on trade relations, what is the most important unresolved question that future research should address?
The biggest unanswered question is how effective politically motivated trade actions, like tariffs, import refusals, or targeted protection, actually are at changing another country's behavior in the long run.
Thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us, Emma.
You're welcome. And thank you for hosting the podcast and giving me the opportunity to talk about international relations research with you.
And of course, we thank you, dear listener, for listening to the Political Science Data Podcast.